When you tell people that you're on that show, Agent Aliens, isn't that like automatically one of those things where they go, oh, okay, you believe in aliens? Like, oh, you believe in UFOs?
It's amazing. In America, there has been a complete change. The answer is no longer no.
Really?
People kind of like go like, wow, interesting, this is being explored, this is being discussed. It's got phenomenal ratings, and it's got an attraction from 5 to 95. And all of a sudden, and I think this is largely due to the format of the show as well, really people are into this. People are beginning to question things. I get feedback from university professors and specifically high school teachers. And the high school teachers are saying, we used to say something like very dogmatically, something like, let's say water is liquid. They can still get away with that. But some of the other claims they're making, students are now challenging. They're saying, well, where did you get that from? And before, there was this acceptance of, oh, yeah, the teacher says so, so we have to accept whatever this knowledgeable person says, and we will just write it down. And all of a sudden, high school teachers, even university students, are basically saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to ask where this came from. Why do you come to that stance? And I think that's interesting, and it's definitely something which is happening in America, because the series is also in different countries. I kind of like don't follow it in all countries. Definitely in like Europe, it's definitely still like, oh, you believe in aliens?
Well, here's the thing that's happening in this country especially, and it's a thing that you can call intellectual wealth. And financial wealth might still be locked down by the elite, but intellectual wealth is no longer.
No.
Intellectual wealth is, look, you don't really have to have any sort of formal education, and you could educate yourself just by reading the internet. You literally, any subject, you could find forums where virtually any topic that you wish to engage in and want to figure things out about could be discussed. Yeah. You could go to, you could download virtually every book that's ever been written about it, and it's not like it used to be. So it's not like when they go into a college, the professor is intellectually incredibly wealthy and the children are intellectually poor. No, the children have fucking smartphones, and they could Google anything. Like, no, that's not why. It was 1726, and they found it this way. And that professor looks like an idiot now because he's got some old, outdated information.
Yep.
It's not easy to just run a bunch of kids, tell them lies.
Well, what do you do with kids?
These fucking kids these days, and they're aliens. But the idea of aliens has always been sexy. It's always been, it's daunting. Like the idea, like, wow, what could you imagine if it is real? What would it be like? And that's why there's 1,000 fucking movies about it.
I was going to say Hollywood down the street.
Yeah. Just look. Like, it's one of those things where I don't know what would happen if it was proven to be real, but I don't think it would be good. If they could prove that there are aliens and aliens exist, I think people are too stupid. I think they would just start jumping off buildings. I don't think they'd be able to handle it.
Yeah, there's various scenarios there, definitely. I mean, the War of the Worlds thing from the 1930s with Orson Welles.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the classic thing of the panicky situation. Then there are those who say that was exaggerated, that it was really isolated, that it were the headlines of the newspapers who invented this kind of thing. I don't know. I mean,
depends how sexy the alien is, I think.
If it's attractive alien?
Yeah, if it's an attractive alien, we might not panic and jump off. We might try to...
Right, like what if they arrive and they're all hot as fuck?
Yeah,
like Natasha Hendricks in Species, remember that?
Maybe this is a conspiracy. Maybe everything about the UFO cover-up has happened because they were ugly and they were not photogenic. And
too insect-like.
And the government is just waiting for beautiful aliens to come, and then there will be disclosure.
Meanwhile, there's going to be a new movie about that very same subject. Now that they've heard this, someone will write a movie about it. It'd be awesome. Hot aliens from space.
Is the show copyrighted?
No. Damn it, we forgot. We forgot to copyright that. Yeah, I think for whatever reason, I think people are barely able to handle this reality. You know, for whatever reason, whether it's they're not living the life that they want to live, they're not around too many people that think a lot, they don't have much education, they don't have a strong mind, they have a lot of phobias, they have, you know, addictions to substances, whatever the fuck it is. There's people that are, a lot of people that are barely hanging on to this life as is.
It's an awful lot of framework. People love to have a framework, and you know, going back to children need a framework. They need structure in their life, and adults, so many adults need to do that as well. And once that framework is in place, and I think this is tying it back to like the academic professors, it's really hard to break out of that. And it's like, you know, whether it is things like hallucinogenic substances, whether it is things like near-death experiences, life after death, all of these things, aliens, lost civilizations, they all somehow are pushing this cardboard thing of the framework saying, help, we need to get through because there's something outside of this framework. And basically people saying, no, framework, keep it intact.
Yeah, the Ancient Aliens one is one where I've had the conversation with people where I sort of described the Zecharia Sitchin thing, the Sitchin scenario, what could have happened, and they look at you like they're trying to find a way to get away. They're looking at you like, what the fuck kind of stupid conversation am I locked in with this idiot? If you've never read any of Zecharia Sitchin stuff, I'll just summarize it very quickly. And Sitchin believes that we were engineered by these alien beings and that it's all in the ancient Sumerian text. His translations of it are all that these people came down and did genetic experiments on human beings and created us to mine for gold, which is really a trip. It's really a mind fuck when you start thinking about how gold has always been valuable. And you're like, why? You can't even make a sword out of it. Like, why did people back then, why was anybody willing to take, like, a bag of gold for your donkey? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why did it have so much value? The Zecharia Sitchin scenario is that these aliens had ruined their environment, and they needed gold dust to suspend their atmosphere to protect them from the radiation. Well, what's really fucked up is scientists didn't figure that, like when they were started to discuss possible climate change, erosion of the ozone layer, what would they do to protect the United States if we lost all of our ozone, our atmosphere? And the number one solution was to suspend reflective particles in the atmosphere. Like, and so Sitchin had actually translated this in the 70s. This is like far before scientists had even proposed that. So it's really kind of interesting. Like, that's one little piece of that Sitchin thing that makes you go, whoa. Like, how did he figure that out? Was that, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know about the environment and the climate change and how much they knew about the ozone layer back in the 1970s. But
well, he was a very controversial man. He was very kind of like adamant and set in his ways, and he wasn't a warm character, but he definitely was an interesting character. And towards the end of his life, together with Inner Traditions, his publisher, he began to kind of like push for the DNA analysis. He wanted to do some DNA testing, and unfortunately, he died before any of that could have happened. But it would have been interesting to see where he was going to take it, because he really was pushing his reputation and his legacy on the line there. And again, it didn't happen because he died. But
the DNA evidence he was trying to find was that we were genetically manipulated and created. That's why the idea is that's why we're so different from every other monkey that's here. I mean, it's so clear that we're different. We're so much different than all the rest of them. And people are like, well, we are apes. We're from a different branch. How the fuck did this one branch just take off? This one branch has cars, and this one branch. I mean, everybody else is the same. They're all just throwing their own shit. Even the chimps that are the baddest. Yeah, they're in this. The chimps are the baddest, smartest motherfuckers, the closest to us. But look at them. They're using a tool. They're sticking a stick to fucking get ants. That's as close to a tool as they get. Like, whoa, woo. Call me when they figure out a bow and arrow, okay? It's the difference between them and us is so gigantic. And I've never heard that adequately explained. Never heard it. The fossil record is baffling to a lot of biologists when it comes to the doubling the human brain size. I've read all these different theories of why the human brain size doubled over a period of 2 million years, and they're all fucking like, it's all like, who knows, man? Who knows? if we really found out conclusively that there was some sort of genetic manipulation by some genetic manipulation by some sort of an outside force, that might be too much for people to handle.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, it's the framework. It's like if we somehow were to be able to change time. And I did an interview for a DVD which is going to come out, I think, in a few months from now, and it's about the Marcel family, the ones who were involved with Roswell. And 2 generations of them, specifically the grandson, Jesse Marcel III, grew up with the absolute conviction that ET existed. The family is absolutely convinced that what grandfather found was extraterrestrial. The dad, at the age of 10, saw some of these artifacts, and they raised his son and the grandchild, i.e. the third, in this absolute conviction that ET existed. And his mindset is completely different from the rest of us. It's like, like at the age of 5, he's not questioning whether what he sees on television about Battlestar Galactica could be possibly real or anything of the science fiction thing. He just grew up with this complete acceptance that it is there. Just like shamanic cultures believe absolutely that there are other entities out there, that there is a larger framework out there. So many people. But the majority of us, the majority of the normal people, get raised in a religion, they kind of grow up with that, and then they continue to endorse it, or they break away from it, and sometimes completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that is very interesting, how 2 billion people right now are in this Catholic tradition all by themselves already, of having this framework which is created for the last 2,000 years, and everything where you look around you in this Western world is basically the cardboard box of the last 2,000 years. They are basically saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to ask where this came from. Why do you come to that stance? And I think that's interesting, and it's definitely something which is happening in America, because the series is also in different countries. The claims they're making, students are now challenging. They're saying, well, where did you get that from? And before, there was this acceptance of, oh yeah, the teacher says so, so we have to accept whatever this knowledgeable person says, and we will just write it down. And all of a sudden, high school teachers, even university students,
really?
People go wow, interesting, this is being explored, this is being discussed. It's got phenomenal ratings, and it's got an attraction from 5 to 95. And all of a sudden, and I think this is largely due to the format of the show as well, really people are
when you tell people that you're on that show Agent Aliens, isn't that automatically one of those things where they go, oh, okay, you believe in aliens, oh, you believe in UFOs?
It's amazing. In America, there has been a complete change. The answer is no longer no. Into this, people are beginning to question things. I get feedback from university professors and specifically high school teachers, and the high school teachers are saying, we used to say something very dogmatically, something like, let's say water is liquid. They can still get away with that, but some of the other